For 5 decades, global trade has been anchored by a single mechanism. Following the collapse of the Bretton Woods system, the US dollar, backed by the deep liquidity of US Treasury securities, became the default unit of account for the planet. In 2025, a shift in the underlying data emerged. For the first time since the 1990s, official global gold holdings reached $3.909 trillion, effectively matching the $3.920 trillion in U.S. treasuries held by foreign governments. This data from the IMF's COFR database tracks the decline. The dollar's share of global foreign exchange reserves has retreated to 57.74%, a low that marks a departure from its earlier dominance. U.S. treasuries are the most liquid assets on Earth, easily traded in massive volumes. Gold, by contrast, is heavy, expensive to store, and pays no interest. Why then are the world's central banks moving so aggressively toward physical metal? Central banks are responding to a fracture in the global financial order. They're increasingly choosing the permanence of physical reserves over the digital promises of sovereign debt, driven by a new perception of risk. Because most international trade is settled in dollars, the global financial system routes through American banks. Over the last decade, the U.S. government has utilized this control to enforce foreign policy, turning access to the dollar into a lever for international compliance. The maximum pressure campaign on Iran demonstrated the consequences of this leverage. By restricting access to dollar clearing systems, the U.S. engineered a currency shortage that saw the rial fall to 1.4 million per dollar, causing a major bank to collapse. The 2022 invasion of Ukraine marked a turning point. Western nations froze roughly $300 billion in assets belonging to the Russian central bank, effectively rendering their dollar and euro reserves useless overnight. This sent a clear message to governments across the global south. Significant dollar exposure is now seen as a major geopolitical vulnerability. It is a financial position that can be activated against a nation the moment its interests diverge from Washington's. By utilizing reserves as a tool for political pressure, the United States signaled to emerging economies that their national wealth was only as secure as their diplomatic standing with the West. This realization triggered a new era of accumulation. In the early 2000s, Western nations were selling hundreds of tons of gold each year. This table identifies the primary actors in this shift. While many nations are buying, the scale is concentrated in a handful of economies with clear strategic motivations. Russia and China have each added more than 1,800 tons to their official vaults. For Russia, the timeline matches its effort to treat dollar exposure as a strategic liability. For China, the accumulation has been massive and deliberate, even during periods of reporting silence. To understand the logic behind these purchases, researchers use quantile-on-quantile regression. This measures how gold behaves not on average, but during the extreme highs and lows of the equity markets. The data reveals a U-shaped relationship. Gold is largely dormant in calm markets, but its value spikes during both exceptional bull markets and, crucially, during severe crashes. Unlike a digital account in New York or London, physical gold in a domestic vault carries no counterparty risk. It cannot be deleted, frozen, or devalued by the policies of a foreign central bank. The regression analysis confirms that these institutions are using gold as a regime-dependent asset, one that provides liquidity and value specifically when the traditional financial system is under extreme stress. For most nations, this isn't an ideological campaign to replace the dollar. It is a strategy of defensive diversification, an insurance policy against an increasingly unpredictable geopolitical environment. This shift is leading to what economists call monetary pluralism. Coalitions like the BRICS nations are now building alternative settlement units and trade systems that operate independently of Western clearinghouses. The objective is to decentralize the world's financial architecture, making it impossible for any single nation to use the global payment system as a choke point for another country's trade. The US dollar remains the most important currency in the world, but its era of absolute monopoly is ending. The world's reserve managers are no longer willing to put all of their trust in a single ledger. By utilizing the global reserve currency as a punitive tool, the United States inadvertently incentivized a global return to assets that exist outside of central authority. In an era of financial sanctions, sovereignty is being found in the weight of physical gold.